Welcome, friends, to the Soul Talk podcast, a show where we explore and uncover the path to the heart, amplifying your conscience. Join me as we meet incredible souls who are in this journey and learn from their experience and different methods that will make you vibrate your heart. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. This is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love, and thank you for being in Soul Talk. Today, we're celebrating our 200th episode. We started in 2020 for having conversations with people because we were in lockdown, guys. And so I was needing that. And when I start having conversations with people all over the world, that's when I realize, it's like, oh my God, this is so important conversations that I should be having it in public. And that's where the idea of Soul Talk podcast came into. And because we're celebrating the 200 episode, I want to give you something. Not only the podcast that it will help you, but if you review all my podcasts, there are very tips and how you can improve or how you can overcome different situations that you're in. I always try to invite very important guests that they're supporting you or giving you tips in how do I navigate different kinds of traumas that I have passed through. But my gift for you, a special gift for you beside of the podcast, it is going to give you 5 free 15 minutes and Akashic Records readings for you. And not only that, that's for 5 people. There's going to be those 15 minutes. And I'm going to give you also for 2 people 1 month free of the Warrior of Love Tribe membership. The only thing that you have to do it is send me a message and write me why it is important for you, or you can write it down underneath this podcast, this live, and tell me why you want it. Because on Sunday 15, I'm gonna be announcing the winners. So like that you can start diving in your progress or answering your questions. And in the celebration of today, of course I have to bring someone very, very special for me. That it is my husband, Rob Garcia. And he is also advocate for bipolar disorder. So we need to dive into that to know what it is this bipolar that many doctors are putting in a lot of medications, and but we don't even understand that, or we hear that someone have it and it may scare us. There's a lot of disinformation out there, and believe me, I've been with this man for 15 years. So we're gonna dive in this one. And so, Rob, thank you so much for accepting my invitation for Soul Talk. I really, really appreciate it.
Of
And
course, I'm glad to be here.
please tell us why you want to become an advocate for bipolar disorder.
Uh, well, uh, Not necessarily setting out to do it for just as a job for the rest of my life. But it is something that I try to participate in as I go along, because I think it's necessary. I think that um, I've been living with the illness for a while, and I have noticed that there are a lot of misconceptions, misunderstandings. I've seen how easily that can happen, and how quickly someone can, damage their life, or not know what's happening to somebody they love, and have questions and need help. And I just over time, I guess, just because I've been through it, and because I've made observations, and had to kind of come up with my own ways to approach it and deal with it. I've tried to come up with things that are helpful, and it turns out there's a whole community of people out there that are willing to share resources, and I just fell in love with that concept. So I advocate to bring awareness to it if I can, and but on a deeper level towards people that actually have it, and help them understand what they're going through and how to get through it as best they can. I am absolutely no expert. Yeah, I'm not a doctor, obviously. I'm just someone who has it. This is a completely subjective thing, And
Yes,
I think,
this is a point of view for the spectators that the people are seeing us, not into. We are not doctors, neither one or the other, but we are people that one that has bipolar disease, that been diagnosed with bipolar disease, and a person that is being living with a person that has bipolar disease. So this is our very personal point of view. Just just to mark that down before we continue.
I would like to apologize in advance for how we got to your point of view. I know it's rough living with me, and I don't know how you do it. I don't know if I would have done it, but thank you. I have a mix of admiration and sincere apology at all times.
But okay, we are talking about bipolar disease, and there's two types according to the medical field: the type one and the type two. What is the difference between one and the other?
Uh, so, just for the briefest of explanations, if somebody's never heard of it at all, bipolar disorder can be categorized as a mood disorder. So it is the sort of thing where your mood, your outlook on life, your the way you see yourself in the world, and how you're interpreting reality, and just a lot of things in there are subject to change. So the polar part of it is because they usually either go towards a certain high or a certain low. That is an extremely general way to put it, and only gives you a very beginning understanding because it really is inaccurate. And so bipolar type one would be people that experience full mania. It's called a state of mania, in which you experience, you lose touch with reality, you have delusions, you can have hallucinations, um, and you feel very energetic, typically, and that can go in a few ways. It can go towards you feeling very irritable, or feeling very productive and happy and having things to do, and just different ways that can go. But um, the other side of that, the other pole, is depression, and more people are familiar with that. So depression is, of course, not just sadness. A lot of people will think that's an important one. A lot of people will think it's just sadness. It's not. It comes with a whole slew of physical symptoms. It actually slows down your metabolism. It slows down your nervous system. It causes all kinds of issues. It can cause aches and pains. So if you go between those two extremes, um, further out of the bounds than people should, um, that is just in a very general sense what bipolar disorder is. The difference between type 1 and 2 is actually very subtle. Uh, type 1, you have mania, like I described it, and type 2, you have something called hypomania. Hypo meaning underneath, like below. And so it really is just more of I wouldn't say necessarily more pleasant, but I guess just kind of more manageable symptoms of mania. So feeling more energy, elevated mood, happy, usually for no reason, just that's just how your brain decided to treat you that day. And that can last typically for a few days, weeks, sometimes months. Um, the the difference between those two is that typically the first one, bipolar disorder type 1, at some point usually ends up in someone's hospitalization, and that's usually how they found out that happened. But if you just have the elevated mood without the delusions and without the hallucinations and without any of that, and it's just kind of a little more manageable, like you can kind of, it's almost like a high functioning form, if you want to put it that way, which of course every single way that I put it is going to be wrong. And it's just, I'm constantly trying to just hone in on the bullseye. It's about getting a lot of stuff wrong, but trying.
And I just wanted to mark to everybody that bipolar disease, when you're in your mania or you're in your depression, it is a cycle emotion.
Yes.
So in the year, you're gonna go again. You're gonna have the all the symptoms, say when you're in a manic state, and then you are gonna go to into you can go to hypermania, or you can go into different mood states, and you're gonna go to depression. Type 1 doesn't go as depressed as type 2, but it's gonna go more manic. And the type 2, it is more depressive more than manic, but it's gonna go again in that circle, and it's gonna have some their mania, but the mania is not gonna be as strong, the type 2, as the type 1. So it is gonna be always going in circles. And I even know people that they have the the type of bipolar, that it is rapid cycles, that they have all those emotions in a week or in 2 days. So it is very, very disgusting for them, because we're gonna talk about different tips and things that we have encountered. Of course, Rob
Mhm.
have it, and me as a supportive family, and that we are being observers how this is very disgusting for the person that it is passing through that, and to the family that they are supporting them to.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask, because an observation of people that are bipolar, I there's doesn't affect all the bipolars type 1. They're not the same, and all the bipolars type 2 are the same.
Right.
Why that happens?
It's a spectrum disease. So it's the sort of thing where there are many different forms that it comes in, and I want to say I think they have gone back and forth because it makes it incredibly complicated to treat. They've gone back and forth as to how to define it. Like, how do you put your finger on this? How do you know someone's bipolar and not just depressed? How does the person know? What if you're depressed a lot? And I've heard people tell me um, with who just have depression, that they thought they were bipolar when they were happy, and then they found out, no, that's just not being depressed, and they just, the bar changes for people. Where is it going to be? And I'm sorry, I drifted away from your question a little bit, but
Yes, the basically what we're trying to find, why there's people that affected more the
okay.
mania or the depression than others.
So, and that is an incredibly complicated question with an even more complicated answer. But because it's a spectrum illness, because it's a little different for everybody, you have trends of what happens. There's a trend. There's kind of a group of symptoms that you could say, okay, there's all these symptoms. If you have this many of them, you probably have it. But there's still differences and nuances, and there's overlap even between the different mental illnesses. Like a manic person can have a lot in common with someone with ADHD, or even someone with schizophrenia. And so the severity, but not just the severity, but the direction that some of these things go in, it's it can cause a lot of confusion. I mean, not just for the person experiencing it, but for the person trying to treat them, or for the person trying to support them. Uh, it's hard on everyone. But just um, I think that you have to also account for individual differences in people. I can tell you right now, for me, for example, I know that one of the possible expressions of it is sensitivity, like a sensory sensitivity. Like, I'm very sensitive to light and to sound, and so and that's a struggle. Not everyone has that. I've met plenty of people with bipolar disorder that don't have that, but I would say probably most of the ones that I've met do, to some degree, have some form of that. And I guess if you want to look at it, like, you ever gone to the Cheesecake Factory? They make cheesecake. I mean, there's all kinds. You can go up there and there's carrot cheesecake, there's coconut cheese, but they're all cheesecake. And to some degree, um, calling it all cheesecake starts to get weird. The further it drifts away from it, that there's just different variations on it. And like I said before, they don't really completely know if it's exactly chemical balance thing, or if it's a imprint of the way your brain's neurons are processing. So it makes it difficult to treat. And it's quite possible that the cause is even difficult for everyone. So, yeah, that's why it can look different from one person to the next, one among other reasons.
Yes, and something that I wanted, I have a bunch of questions about that, but one of the questions it is let's dive into the misconceptions, because it is important, because people that do not understand, or they don't have bipolar disease, or they have not seen bipolar disease, but then suddenly meet someone with bipolar disease, it is hard for them to understand what is passing they are passing through. I'm gonna give an example about this. In my case, when Rob and me we became boyfriend and girlfriend in that time, and about 15 years ago, and many of my friends like, hey, let me present you with my boyfriend and so forth. And people like, oh my god, he's bipolar and he's gonna beat you, he's gonna treat you horrible and this and that. And they even stopped talking to me because of that misconception. So I wanna dive in all these misconceptions about bipolar, because instead of being support, you're putting that person that is got bipolar in a corner. And later on, oh, of course, he commits suicide because he's bipolar. But that can happen to any person, not necessarily with bipolar disorder or not. So there's a lot of misconceptions that I would like to clarify today. Hi everyone, this is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love. And if you have been feeling stuck where you are right now, or if you have felt that you cannot connect with others in the same language or the same emotions that you're feeling, if you're a coach, a healer, energy worker in any of those branches, maybe this is for you, because we have felt the disconnection for the rest of our family, friends, that we cannot connect to them. And we're so afraid to actually go deep dive when we're getting triggered by our own clients, because we're seeing our mirror image with them. My name is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love, and that's my spiritual name. And I take clients from feeling confused and feeling stuck to feeling free, to feeling that they feel empowered from themselves. I created a system, Path to the Heart, that goes in 3 levels. And the first level, it is healing the inner child, healing the parts of us that we've been so afraid, or it's very painful to do it. I have done it myself, not only with me, and I have done it with many of my clients, that I take them to this process. The second level, it is to go more into inner self, clearing the family lineage, to breaking the contracts and vows, learning deeper more about the laws of the universe. And the third level, it is learning how to channel, how to do waking up your and getting online your gifts, your unique gifts that the world so much needs right now. So if you wanted to know more about this, I am eager to show you and to teach you all what I know that I use every day in my life. So thank you for being here in this page. I really appreciate it. And this is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love. So can we talk about the misconceptions about bipolar disease? Well, not
Yeah,
disease, disorder, I'm sorry.
it's, you know what, it's splitting hairs. They call it something different every 10 minutes. I mean, it's been called manic depressive illness, bipolar disease, bipolar disorder. They just whatever. You know what? I think honestly, I think manic depression was probably the most spot on name, but they wanted to include more symptoms or something. But anyway, so yeah, some misconceptions.
Yes. What is the misconceptions that you have heard? I mentioned one.
Uh, well, let me start with the ones that you mentioned. Okay, so the idea that bipolar people are violent. It is a misconception. They do not commit violent crimes at a higher rate than everyone else. I mean, I think that what ends up happening is people witness the explosive anger, and that is very unfortunate. I mean, but I will be honest. If somebody caves into that and they have a moment of, difficulty, like you said, everybody, once they get to some kind of point of stress and they can make a bad decision or something in their life, that happens all the time. But it doesn't prelude someone towards it. It doesn't mean that they're going to. It's not a foregone conclusion. Like you mentioned, when people thought I was, uh, because I had bipolar disorder, that I would be violent with you. And you know what? I get it. People form judgments quickly because they need to make quick judgments about, what do I do here? What's safe? You walk through a place and there's people around you. You have to kind of decide, who am I safe around and who am I not? Which direction do I go? Who do I look in the eye? That's true. Like in the animal kingdom, in society, there are red flags that are pretty easy red flags. I mean, probably, if someone with bipolar disorder, they're probably a little dramatic. It's but that is kind of a misconception, but kind of not. It's one of those. But I'd like to think the violent one. I don't think people are wanting to be violent, just because, or that's just part of the imprint of that personality. At the same time, I'm not going to say none of them are. Come on, we know. Name any kind of group of people, anyone, and there's going to be a few bad apples, right? It ends up bringing negative attention. So if someone has encountered a bipolar person in their life who has caused a scene and, maybe done something harmful, then they'll stick with you, or if like someone says, "Oh yeah, bipolar. Oh yeah, my aunt on you know, my mom's side, her ex uncle or whatever beat her because he was bipolar." I don't know. You hear these things all the time, but just because somebody does something horrible doesn't mean they had something, or vice versa.
I would like to add to that it comes in families, guys. So you meet as a person that has bipolar disorder, and but you love their family and you're afraid of that person. Guess where that person took it? It runs in families. It's just, in a way, I'm gonna put it in this way how I understand it. It's like hemorrhoids. If someone in your family down the line they have hemorrhoids, you're gonna inherit probably the hemorrhoids, or you're gonna pass it to your kids. So
And both can be a complete pain in the ass. That's true. Uh,
yes, you mentioned that.
it does have a statistical tendency to show up more, as they say, because I think they're careful about how they put it. Like, they don't want to say you're definitely going to get it. They tend to say, "Oh, if you had a relative who had it, then there's a higher chance of you having it." And yeah, come on. I mean, that means
And
there's a little genetics involved.
and the thing was that before, many people do not went to a doctor because they were having an episode. If
Yeah,
they were depressed, we deal with the depression. If they were manic, we deal with the crazy person. But they did not actually try to or when and get diagnosed, right? So probably many of our ancestors they were bipolar, but we just didn't knew because they were not
yeah,
diagnosed.
yeah. Actually, I mean, there's actually historians that go through historical figures and kind of point out who probably was, and who wasn't, and just they've got some interesting picks. There's a very advantageous element to the manic part if you can do it right. So if you let's see, if you're in particularly a hypomanic state, which is not full blown mania, because somewhere maybe getting right up to it but not quite there, then you'll have a lot of energy. Typically you'll want to get stuff done. You're motivated. You have ideas, and you're like, let's do it now. Why don't we just do it now? And you start a lot of things. You may not finish them because what might run out is in a few days or weeks. When that goes away, all of a sudden it's like somebody stuck you in water, and now you're walking around thinking, why is it so hard? What is this? Like, I was running, I was free. This is, what is this? And so you might have lingering projects that didn't get finished or something like that. But you can really, if you know how to gauge it, you can be incredibly productive during those times.
Yes, and let's talk about the symptoms, because many people, they have not gone to the doctor, they have not been diagnosed, and what it is even useful to being diagnosed, putting you in a box.
Okay. Okay. I'll start by saying the way I did, the way I got diagnosed. So, through my life, when I had trouble, I would go in when I had trouble. When was the trouble? It was when I was feeling down. It wasn't when I was feeling up. It was when I was at a low point. So I would go in. They would tell me I had depression. That happened several times over through my early life, as I was a kid growing up. Um, of course, I would get into trouble and do things that probably constituted manic behavior, but you don't really bring those things up. I mean, it's kind of hard to determine what's going on there. So, well, I got diagnosed when I was 27. I did not believe it. Thought it was ridiculous. So again, what I have what I had never heard the term bipolar before at that time. I thought it was absurd, and um, from there, I got again some incident happened. What looking back on what happened, I was in a mixed state. So I was in a mixed state between mania and depression, and those are very problematic. And those states are when you have elements of both, which is again one of the reasons I said it's kind of not accurate to call it two polar opposites because they can happen at the same time. And that's anyway. So during those times, it's pretty chaotic. We'll talk more about that later about what that's like, but required hospital visit. Um, and I want to say the third time I started paying attention, listening, reading on it. And then it started discovering something that was absolutely horrifying to me, that there's actually a difference between me and other people, that I'm not normal, I guess, for lack of a better word, because all I'd ever known is my point of view, my point of view in life, what it looks like. I don't know what it's like to be someone else. But when they told me that and I read up on it, it gave me a better understanding of me. So all of these things that people will tell you all around you all the time that might make sense to each other might not make sense to someone with bipolar disorder. And I needed to know what what is it that'll make sense to me. It's different. It's not going to be what these people need to hear. So if I'm in a depressive state, and this is a very, very common one. If you're in a depressive state, you literally have clinical depression of some kind, and somebody says, cheer up. Do you think that, I mean, it's not that kind of thing, like your body is undergoing a cascade of chemical changes that are affecting everything. Your perception of time slows, like you become lethargic. But to know that that's, to have a word for that, I guess is what I'm saying, to have a word for these things and to know what are the differences and how can someone talk to me about me, that's where it's useful.
I have a question about that. Okay, let's talk about the symptoms of bipolar. And because there's two types, they can overlap sometimes a little bit, but we talk already about the difference. But it is in the manic state. Can you describe the characteristics of the manic state? Because there is a lot of issues that we're going to be talking about later on about solutions.
Sure.
But like we're gonna talk about, they're spending more money. They don't have, they are not even aware when they're spending more money in many states.
One
Or
of the
mhm.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, 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 please continue.
Okay, one of the uh, let's see. So one of the benefits of knowing what you have is being able to, and it takes time. It takes a while to do this, but to learn to see it coming, because it's cyclical, and because you know that these things are going to keep coming back. Um, Eventually, you start to learn. You pay attention to little things. Like I know that when I get a little bit of a metallic taste in my mouth, or I start feeling like a, I don't know how to say it. It's kind of like if I feel like a lot of adrenaline, I know that I'm starting to become manic, and then so I start to. There has to be protocols that kick in at that point, because you have to treat yourself differently in the world, differently how you interface with the world. This is when that happens. The gambling thing, like yes, one of the symptoms, I won't go over all of them, but one of them is you lose your inhibitions. So there is usually a longer path between point A and B, as far as like somebody getting to the point of like, maybe I should maybe I should have a new car. Maybe it would be a good idea to get a new car. Um, the one I have is breaking down, and it would make sense to get a new car. Okay, well, that's logical, that's rational. But if one day you're like, oh yeah, I like my car. You know what? I'd like another car. Why not? I think it'd be great. Drive two cars, uh, and
There's
then you
no.
just go buy one. Like the safeguards that are in place for most people's thinking, it just knocks all that aside and goes right to this point that you don't want it to go to. Uh, so you need to have something in place, and I try to do this for myself. I try to set up some rules for myself. So if I encounter, like, if I go through my spending and I'm like, oh, dude, wait, I'm buying a lot of things I don't need, things that I just maybe once in a while think about but don't need, like a new VR helmet. Those are expensive. Like that's not an impulse buy, and I almost did it. And thankfully, our daughter stopped me. Uh, but it's helpful also to have other people around you who can see that and put the brakes on you. Uh, I relied heavily on my family.
We're still talking about the characteristics first. Later on, we're gonna be talking about the solution.
Okay. The okay, I'm sorry, but the scattered thinking is another one. So
Yeah.
sorry.
That's one of the characteristics. Guys. That's why it is very similar of attention deficit disorder, because it is hard to focus and hey, we're doing this until you finish it, and then you can move on to the next thing. And attention deficit disorder has that same characteristic. That's why sometimes they get the diagnosis and it might be wrong. It might be something very similar to both of them or one or the other one.
I mean, in defense of that, I want to say I think that, at least in part, I think that's where creativity comes from. Um, if you can think in a complete straight line between one thing and another, that's great. That's good. It's logical. It's wonderful. You'll save time. Everything's going to be great. But if between one thought and another, your mind goes in a thousand directions, and if it's able to kind of remember some of those directions when it finally gets back to where it's supposed to go, sometimes it brings back some difference with it, and it's a creative process.
There's a lot of positive things about being bipolar that we will talk about that. There's not only bad things about being bipolar.
Uh, by the way, being an advocate for bipolar disorder doesn't mean I think everyone should have it. Go get bipolar disorder. That's not even how that works. It's impossible.
And it's not contagious neither, guys.
No, no.
But okay, another of the characteristics it is beside of spending, scatter thoughts. Um, you're gonna go into a cycle. It comes every often because it depends on the person. Some people like I mentioned the rapid cycles. They have it way more faster. than a regular bipolar person that it goes 1 week, 2 weeks with different states. Now, but we have also they are more sexual when they're in the manic state, and also the lack of patience. That's another one, and another one was the spending. What else? What there's more. I know there's more.
Oh yeah, impulsivity, irritability is a lack of patience one that you're talking about. So irritability. So when someone is manic, in particular, if in a manic state, it's an elevated state. But the thing is that if you're in a manic state, time is passing. Like okay, not everybody talks about this, but I did. I have heard at least one other person mention this before. That it's not just bipolar as far as a mood, it's like bitemporal. It's like you're experiencing time differently in different ways at different times. So when you're manic in your head, everything's going so fast that the world around you seems to be going annoyingly slow. Like why is everything so slow? It seems like being at a traffic light takes a year or something, and uh, it's very easy to get irritated when you're concentrating on something and things distract you. Even family, even like things or stuff that happens is completely normal. Like um I mean, it doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter. It can be so easy to be irritated, and the irritability thing is tough because it is so hard to control. It is so hard to get in front of that. In your rational mind, you will want to, like, keep in mind, of course, there's a little noise over there. Don't get too bothered. It's not a big deal. There's this voice in your head telling you that, but but it's still happening. Like you could just feel it kind of starting to untwist. Anyway, sorry.
And another one that is another of the symptoms is the grandiosity, and that's what there's even a movie that I forgot the name. It was Richard Gere in that movie that in this grandiosity he wanted to jump from a building because
Mr.
he
Jones.
the sensation that
Yeah.
they can fly. That's where it becomes dangerous, the manic state.
Well, yeah, I did speak to a person once. We had an interesting conversation. So a lot of people here. Here's a statistic. And it's, 1 out of 5 people with bipolar disorder will probably lose their life to taking it themselves. I'm sorry, I messed with the camera. No, that's not good odds. It's 1 in 5. It's 20%. That's bad. Um, and But it doesn't always. I think there's a misconception that it's definitely going to come from being depressed. Yes, when you're in a depression, more people are familiar with depression. When you're in it, things can get very, very hopeless, and you can completely lose all of the nice brain chemicals and make you feel motivated and like hanging in there no matter what. Um, but in the manic side, you can do some risky things that can cost you in a whole different way. And it wasn't because you necessarily intended to. This is accidental, and that is a lot of the downfall from that too.
Yes, and the hallucinations. And I am very biased about the hallucinations. I wanna just because I'm a spiritual, I'm a channeler,
Mhm.
and I don't consider myself bipolar. But for the standpoints of view of people that of medical industry, hallucinations is one of the big ones of bipolar disease, and they can have conversations with people that are not there. And I'm very biased in that one. I wanted to be clear in this because I don't believe the hallucinations are bad. Depends on which kind of hallucination you're having too. you know, that's something let's make it clear. You're having hallucination that you're in hell. And like, oh my gosh, we need to step back and figure it out how to change that hallucination that you're not in hell.
Um, for the hallucinations, I don't know if it's exactly what people would assume. Um, okay, when you go into like a full blown mania, and this is just speaking from my own point of view. This isn't even saying this is. I'm not speaking for bipolar people. Just me. Okay. So when I have my hallucinations, and I've looked it up, and I think there's been some that also experience this. So um, it would be mostly stuff like I see movements in the periphery, like in the peripheral vision. I see things moving, and then I'll turn and look, and of course they're completely still, like it's like an object. It's like an immobile object, like a phone, right? But then I move, and I see the phone kind of, I don't know, like get up and look at me, and like I'm like, whoa, whoa, what? And I look, and it's completely, and I'm like, what the hell? Okay, that's fine. That one's easy to tell. That one's really easy to tell it's hallucination because it's, there's reality right in front of you. That's different to me, and I'm not speaking for other people. Okay, but another one might be tactile. Like I do get the one where, um, like your nose can itch like a lot, uh, more than it should, especially like in the tip of your nose. It's really uncomfortable. The auditory, I haven't. I tend to hear speech in noise, but I think, see, to me, and I know you said that there's different ways of looking at it. I've always took it to mean that the brain looks for patterns, and that's what's happening to me, and I just sort of leave it at that. Um, as far as like having a full blown like, oh, you know, I'm an important person, the grandiosity of like, oh, I'm like, I don't know, I'm, the greatest poet of all time or something. That's a delusion. That's different. Yeah.
Not
That's it.
only, I'm not talking about, I don't think he's talking about saying out loud, I am the greatest poet that I have ever existed. It is actually feeling that, and everybody's lesser than you.
Yeah.
That
And I can,
that's what he's referring. Not of saying it. You can say it,
yeah.
and because that's how you see yourself, and that's cool. That's believing in yourself, and I support that. The
But
thing is
yeah,
that the other people are lesser than you. That's the part that it gets confusing, and it comes with a bunch of problems.
and the
Thinking that
poet thing is just an example. Let's just say I thought I was the best electrician of all time, right? Okay. So, and I really believe this in my head. Like it's a firm belief, and as far as I'm concerned, it's unchallenged. Yeah, until I don't even know what would have to happen. But there's no proof. Like there's no reason. I mean, these people have had more training. There's probably people that have, and I'm not an electrician. I'm just putting like an example out there. But it's something more subjective, like saying you're the best chef, you know, which a lot of chefs suffer from some of that anyway.
the thing is, the positive part of being manic, it is the creativity.
Yep,
That
yep, it can do a lot for you.
yes, you're an artist, or even you're a businessman, because creativity is not only about writing or painting or sculpting or dancing. It is also resolving problems. That is part of the creativity.
Yeah, there's another part to the grandiosity. I got to tell you, without that grandiosity, there are things I never would have done. There are places I never would have gone. There are people I never would have bothered to talk to. It was responsible for that little push to think that I actually could do stuff during really interesting times where I didn't think I really had that choice. And not, everything in my mind told me, hey, the universe is yours, go for it, go get that. And then sometimes it empowers you to give it a shot and try, and other times it's like a really really bad idea. Like is it scene in that movie that you mentioned, Mr. Jones, where see, he was, I believe the character was a musician who was like a conductor. Yeah. So like you went to a concert and they were playing Beethoven's Fifth, and and then he was upset that the pace wasn't fast enough, so he got on stage and tried starting to conduct the orchestra and got arrested, and that was one of the scenes in the movie. And yeah, that's
Let's talk about the positive things about being bipolar beside of being creative.
yeah. Positive things. I would say there are a lot of positive things. There's not a lot of disorders or diseases or whatever you want to call it, where people, if you gave them a choice, they might actually want to keep it. And I would. I wouldn't want to live another way. I don't want to be another way. Um, Positives, besides just being involuntarily creative, um, which is not true of everybody. I think that's one of those things that if you can harness it, that maybe you can do it that way. Um, some people end up using the manic energy that they have to be very productive. Some of them can get large projects done in short amounts of time. Uh,
But there,
Sometimes,
but it comes like the danger, like what was the name of this actor? The one that did the Joker. That because
oh,
one
Heath Ledger.
other the symptoms, it is inability to sleep,
Yeah,
and, and that's a big issue for bipolar one and bipolar two, and that's what
yeah,
happened.
that one
Heath Ledger.
is. So, and then so the way they think he passed away was he was just trying to sleep. It was really hard, and he took an unfortunate combination of things, and they were all like medicines he was prescribed and or over the counter. It wasn't anything illegal. It was just sometimes trying to find that off switch, just to put yourself down, just so you can rest, just so your mind can slow down. It's hard. I mean, there are different things that can help with that. I don't want to get too much into the medical part of it, because you could go to a doctor and you can talk to them about it if you have trouble with it. But there's over the counter stuff too. I mean, you can take valerian root, different natural stuff if you want. I would still ask a doctor about it, because every now and then there are things that could end up going in the wrong direction. Uh, there are some supplements they actually recommend against taking, because where they could normally help boost your mood and help you sleep. If someone's bipolar, you just realize that those mechanisms are already broken. So if someone is getting into an elevated state and you give them, from what I understand, if you give them St. John's wort and 5-HTP, for example, the 5-HTP might be helpful for sleep, but these things start adding up as far as building your serotonin, and then before you know it, the person's in a full blown manic state, and and then it's really hard to sleep. Oh man, that's one of the hardest things to regulate in a person's life, a bipolar person's life. Probably, uh, I would say 80% of the maintenance of it is just making sure you sleep regularly and sleep well.
Now, uh, how important is obviously I know it is very important the support system that you can have,
Oh, yeah.
but let's speak about that for the people that they have rejected, pushed away, etc. A bipolar person just because they find out their diagnosis bipolar.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Uh, so we got married, and I know that the first time, um, maybe you didn't quite know what you were getting
Yeah.
yourself into completely, because it takes a while for a lot of those things to come out. It takes a while to really get the full idea of what you're dealing with.
Yes.
Um,
Just for the people that they don't know, I'm gonna tell you what he's referring about. We married in 2009, and we divorced and separated 7 years ago. We just got remarried November 7th. That's what he's talking about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Um, so it was rough, man. I know, I saw it all over you. It was rough. I put you through a lot. I'm so sorry. Gosh, it took you a while to recognize my patterns and cycles and things, and you have been incredibly supportive. Even when we did split, you were still my best friend, and still probably the only person that really understood me, or at least tried.
My advice for everybody that is a supporting family or friend or wife or mother for a bipolar person, it will be that I'm not going to say that it's going to be easy, that you think, oh, they're going to have the same mood forever. Your life is going to be very, very interesting. It's never going to be boring. I can
It's a
tell
way to
you
put it.
that. But at the same time, any person in the world, bipolar or not, they just want to be seen and heard and be loved and feel protected. That's something that every single human being wants and needs.
Me
And
too. Yeah.
and obviously in certain points in their life when they're manic, it's like dealing with a toddler sometimes, or a Peter Pan personality that it is, hey, don't jump over there, you can come down, or when they're sad and you just give them that love and honor your emotions so like that it pass faster, because you say as a support to a person that it is depressed, come on, snap about it. It's just gonna make it worse because they're not honoring the emotions, so they're gonna get worse. So it is important to don't hide your emotions from you. You're bipolar, or don't hide it from the people that you're living with. Like right now, I'm in a bad mood. I prefer to go talk about those emotions
And
because it's just gonna make it worse.
there's something I'd like to mention before I forget. It is incredibly important to have support, because I can tell you that I ran from just one part of my life to the next, burning bridges and, like, losing people's trust. And I wasn't always the best friend. I wasn't always very self-aware. But the people that I rely on for support, the ones that offer it and are caring, make all the difference in the world, all the difference in the world to someone like me. Um, I just really think that anyone with the disorder or the condition struggles to be understood, and it's a tightrope, man. Like if you work somewhere, for example, I've worked places, and it's tough, man. It's tough to gauge whether you can talk about it at all, because if you're going to make friends at work, it's part of your life. It's a big part of who you are, and it's going to come up at some point. Uh, and then it's just part of the whole. How vulnerable are you going to be? And some of them end up being wonderful, wonderful, supportive colleagues. Just absolutely magnificent people. And then you're going to have some that don't understand, or then they're like they just don't see you the same way after that point. And then it gets a little rough. I remember I worked at a place, just working banquets, at a hotel, and as soon as one of the supervisors found out that I had bipolar disorder, they just, it was already in their head that they wanted to get rid of me. I left before that happened, only because I found a better job, but it doesn't always work out that way. I mean, sometimes you can lose some support from people that can do more damage in your life. But in general, yeah, you owe it. I will say to the bipolar people out there, you owe it to the people who make the effort to understand your best self. You know, give them your best, and it's gonna go wrong, but come back to your best self. Come back to it if they let you. I mean, I've had some people, you act certain way too many times, and then they like, you know what, I don't want you in my life anymore. And I totally understand. I totally understand. Everybody has to do that with some people sometimes, um, but the ones who stick around are special. Treat them right.
I discovered one technique that I even name it wrong, that I call it bulldog, and it's not, apparently it's not a bulldog. Uh, Something that a bipolar person do is they get an idea in their head and they're running that idea for hours, for days, for weeks, and they cannot let
Fixations.
it go. They cannot let it go. So I call it a bulldog uh, technique. Why? Because apparently I did the dog. I make the wrong name. What is the name of the dog?
Pit bull, I believe.
People, when they bite, they cannot let go. So basically, you have to open the mouth so like that they can open their mouth and let it go. Instead of people, I call it bulldog. That's why I say that it wrong wrong name, but it is the same concept. So we have cues between us. When I say, "Oh, you're bulldogging," and it's like, "Oh, okay," I realize and I let go the idea, because or else that can make you more depressed or more manic or more angry or more sad or more into whatever emotion you're passing through. So it is important that if you are supporting emotionally, physically, whatever, in any way, a person that is bipolar, tell me, hey, right now you're bulldogging. So like that, they can let go that idea and move on.
I didn't used to know that was a thing, and I'm sure as a result have acted completely horrible in the past to so many people, because to me, when I get fixated on an idea, it makes all the sense in the world to chase that down to its natural end, whatever it is. And but other people are not thinking that way, and I might dwell on something for for way too long. Um, and it's monotonous and bothersome to others. And even if it's like not a bad thing, I remember that I was obsessed with that the big alien in the chair in the movie Alien from 1979, the space jockey. I was obsessed with that, like just the one that they found on that dead planet. And oh, when I found out they were coming out with a movie about it like 30 years later, I freaked out, and I just watched the trailer like probably 2,000 times. Um, and researched all the art behind it that H.R. Giger did, and then just
So,
stories.
so basically, going back to the idea, the tip
Mm.
is if you're obsessing with an idea, you cannot let it go, and that may not even let you go to sleep. That idea is running, running, and running, and running, and running around. It can be for hours, days, weeks, months, and it will stop them to moving forward. So there's this technique, you're supporting them, and it's like you have to let it go, that idea, so they can move forward. And Rob is been working with a bipolar survival guide that hopefully comes out soon.
Well, I'm
So
working on creating one. Yeah.
because there are rules and regulations that you can put to yourself so you don't spend too much, so you don't have night nightstands, so you cannot
One night stands. Yeah.
or do drugs or do alcohol or gambling or going to sleep or bulldogging yourself. So like that, those tips are important, right, Rob?
They sure are. Thankfully, I have too much social anxiety to have one night stand, so that's usually what kept me out of it. But but it's true. I mean, there's uh, you're going to need to self regulate. Um, if somebody's there to tell you that you're obsessing on something, that's great. Some obsessions are good. Like I said, it's a double-edged sword, like the ability to focus on something, because once you do bulldog, as you're putting it, once you do zero in on something, if it's productive and it's a project, then that's great. But if you're bulldogging on some negative, like if something, you get, you get a disagreement with somebody earlier that day and you keep bringing it up, that's awful. And yes, I mean, there's a lot of growing to do. I want to just say, and of course, I'm sorry, I keep going on tangents and my mind's all over the place. And thank you for bringing me back to the center. That's cool. I totally appreciate that. I'm not offended. Every time you bring me back to where we're actually supposed to be on topic. I just will say um, that the people that are taking care of you, or the people that are being understanding with you, require you to take responsibility for your condition. You have got to take responsibility for it. You cannot just say, "Oh, I'm bipolar. That's why I did that." Like, "Oh, I set the house on fire because I'm bipolar. Oh well, that's just how it goes." No, that's not cool. Like, it's still on you, and anything that happens is results. I mean, you mentioned like if people are in a hypersexual mood and then they have like their one night stands or something. If they're not with a partner, well, it's risky. Probably should do that if you can help it. No judgment. It's just. But if you're with someone and you do that, that's awful. Come on, like, you're really going to hurt someone like that? That's not okay. The responsibility is still on you, and as soon as it's made clear to you that you have done something out of character, you need to try to backtrack and clean that up and be the person they need you to be. I struggle with that all the time.
And something that I would like to say to everybody, if you have bipolar, you're being diagnosed with bipolar, there is a way that you can grow. You don't have to stay always the same with the same mistakes and just give up in life and give up in your own personal growth. You just have to can come to actually get to know you, what triggered you, what when you're bulldogging yourself. You need to learn how to become the observer of your thoughts and your emotions so you have more control over you. And what other advices you will give it to them?
Just as long as you're on that line of thinking, one thing that I did learn about myself, I was living in an apartment by myself for a little while, and I do have problems with irritability. And one way, it took a while and some experimentation, but I bought some noise canceling headphones. Oh my God, they were so amazing. They were so helpful, very wonderful, because I would get irritated with the sounds of like neighbors and people just living their lives, everyday stuff. Like, I have no right to get mad at them for this. It's just people around living. And but I found out, okay, because I got to understand this about me. This is my problem. What do I do about it? So I found that if I turn on some noise, like I have a speaker dedicated to playing nothing but like a low hum. It cancels out a lot of the noise of people's engines, when the cars going by and stuff. And if I put on the sound of rain, it drowns out a lot of the speech, if I hear people talking. And there's just different ways that I've come up to learn how to deal with it. Of course, with the light thing, it's difficult because um, I'm like, I'm sensitive to it, and it's hard to expect everyone around me to accommodate that because their needs are different. So I have one room in particular that I have full control of the light, and that's fine. That's all I need. I try to. It's a struggle. It's a struggle to integrate with everyone and to get to know what triggers me and to avoid those, but also still maintain my responsibilities to everyone else.
So, if you guys want more information about, if anyone wants more information about being bipolar, what websites do you recommend for them or what treatment?
There's actually, as far as treatment, I think that's a tough one. Treatment, I'm going to say, of course, there's a whole world of different ways to treat it. There's
I recommend
medicines is one way that people use. Do we have time to go into that?
not much. We're not much.
Okay. Okay, so I know that medicines are one way, but I just consider them, to me, it's to each their own. Some people have helped them a lot. They're fine with whatever side effects there are. It's a journey right into others. Um, Maybe not, but I want to say that everybody has to do work on themselves. No matter what it is that you do, you have to work on this stuff yourself. Whether you have the medicines or not, it's like having training wheels or guardrails or something, but you still need to know how to drive. You still need to know how to ride a bicycle, and that's on you. But there are some pretty good resources if anybody needs help. There's NAMI, of course, the National Association of Mental Illness, I believe, NAMI.org, which is nationwide. I think they might even be international. There's Bipolar Hope magazine, which they have a website called bphope.com. Actually, they interviewed me for an article about sugar once. They're really cool. And then there's a YouTube channel that I like a lot, called Polar Warriors, and it's run by a guy also named Rob. So I'd seal of approval
It's
right there automatic.
this website.
Yes, yes.
Perfect.
And I think that one, Polar Warriors, I think his name's Rob Whitaker. Amazing, down to earth, real world advice. Those are great resources. But do yourself a favor, learn about it. If somebody has it, don't be afraid of them. Help someone with it in your life. And if you have it, look for resources on how to get to understand it. There's so many different approaches to deal with it.
Polar Warriors.
Yes.
Dot org.
I have, I know I've seen him on YouTube. Let me see if he's got a
Okay.
.org.
In YouTube.
Let me see if
Okay. This one drop.
see. Yes, if you look it up by that name, you'll find it. Great channel. He's been one of the best resources I've found, and there's lots of them. I'm sorry for the ones I didn't mention. There are a lot of good resources out there.
So just basically my advice for you all is learn to be the observer of your thoughts and your emotions so you can have the control of the life experience that you're going to have, because you're not aware of what you did, what did you say, what are your thoughts, or what are your emotions. You're just going to split out more around the world. So if we want to change it, if we want to create a better world, learn how to do that. Those are basic skills that everybody should already have, and like that you are going to be more in control of who you are.
It's well put.
Do you have something else that you would like to add before we say goodbye?
There's so much to talk about, which is why I'm just writing a book. So I'm going to go ahead and write a bipolar survival guide of sorts, and I hope to get more of this out into the world at that time. That'll be coming in the next couple of months.
So, guys, don't forget, before we say goodbye, I just wanted to remind you about the gifts that I have in celebration of our episode 200, that it is to 5 people. I'm going to give away 15 minutes of the free Akashic Records reading. And also to 2 people, they're going to have 1 month free from a Warrior of Love Tribe membership. Just write me down underneath this video or send me a private message why it is important for you. And on Sunday 15, I'm going to be announcing the winners for this. So thank you so much for being in Soul Talk. And if this was helpful, please share it with your friends and give us a like, and don't forget to subscribe in our YouTube channel. And soon it's going to be in Captivate too, so you can listen to too. Thank you so much. This is Monica Ramirez, the Warrior of Love.